Miss Vicky brought up a point that we've had a conversation about. This came up during the task force as well,
Mm-hmm.
and that conversation is about ACEs, adverse childhood experience. She's talking about trauma that those kids possibly experience. And go ahead, Doc.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that is people don't understand as professionals how much we need to educate parents and the community about ACEs. It's real. You know, Ryan, I always talk about it. I'm a huge fan of the theory and the practice, because it identifies early childhood experiences that are adverse. That's real trauma. In fact, my wife has a client who is dealing with that. At the age of 30, she's realizing that many of the things that she struggles with is a result of adverse childhood experiences and trauma. And it's crazy, because I'm kind of consulting. We kind of cross consult when we don't have the same clients. And just in general, the thing is that you're watching a person not be able to function as an adult because of something that happened when they were 8.
A child, yeah.
And we don't know how powerful that is. I mean, every aspect, relationship-wise, social-wise, professional-wise, is impacted by something that happened early in childhood.
Doc, let me just plug this real quick, and then, Greg, we can keep on, moving this conversation. But we talk about leadership. We've talked about Sheriff Chitwood over in Volusia County. We've talked many a times about Sheriff Lima over in Seminole County. But
Roland here in Orlando.
Yeah, and Chief Roland, in Orlando. But when we talk about ACEs, Pasco County Sheriff Narco is looking at doing something innovative. I mean, he has this intelligence-led policing. Some of you may have read about it. But here's something that the sheriff's office is looking into, is getting his arms around utilizing this ACEs and looking at how, with his deputies, that can they interface with the community, Doc, with this ACEs, and looking at how can they do the wrap or make the referral for wraparound services. Because, Doc, you said it earlier. I mean, we're asking law enforcement to be everything to everybody, and unfortunately, man, they cannot. I met your mom and dad. What was your intervention and prevention strategies when you?
I didn't spank them. I didn't go out back and get a spit.
Spoil the child. That was the intervention method for me. Listen, hey, what no mess around with that. What no mess around with that. But real quick now, Brother Love, you just mentioned something. Now I got to go back. Now you say Pasco County.
Yes.
Is this a Pasco County we had a conversation about?
Absolutely. Hey, Greg.
Now, did they straighten that out? Because there were some issues with that process that they were using,
and they're straightening out. Because Greg, we had them on the show about.
Well, we didn't have Pasco. We had experts on the show.
This was about 4 months ago.
Yeah.
Well, man, I'm pleased, and I can't tell you exactly what they've done, but I'm pleased to tell you that Sheriff Narco is engaging the community, having some conversation.
Right. Because the last I heard, it was some uptightness going on. But now
you're right.
If they had a willingness, because I know that that Dr. Randy B. Nelson was either engaged with them or was going to engage them to see what could be done to get more community insight as to how this process could be better utilized. And if that's been done, then kudos to them. But if not,
and that's the conversation.
Okay, all right.
That is the conversation.
All right. But these police officers, much like all of the police officers in your community, no matter if it's a small municipality or a large metropolis, they're putting their lives on the line for folks every single day. And when they run into these types of circumstances and situations, there has to be some type of understanding of what they have put themselves into.
Right. Well, you mentioned it earlier, and Dr. Nelson with Bethune-Cookman University Center of Law and Social Justice is he's working with Sheriff Chitwood. He's worked with Sheriff Lima, working with Sheriff Narco, and all around the state, man. But you got to ask yourself the question, that two-way exchange, that two-way accountability, where are we at with that?
Yeah. No.
Now, Rod, I want to, Greg, we came up with another clip, and I shared this with Rod, and I couldn't stop watching this because it amazed me, because we often vilify law enforcement, but the professionals, they have to exercise restraint. So I want to play this clip.
And this is Pasco County Sheriff's Office, right?
This is Pasco County. Now, the same one we were talking about with the predictive. Just pay attention to this. I want you guys to watch this.
Hey, put the window down. Put that gun down now. Put the gun down. I do not want to do this. Put the gun down. Put the gun. I do not want to do this, sir. Please do not do this. Please do not do this. Put the gun down. Put the gun down. Do not, sir, please do not do this. Do not do this. Listen to me. Yes, you do. I'm looking at it. Lift your hand up. Lift your hand up. Put your hand on the steering wheel now. Put your hand on the steering wheel. Now. Put the hand on the steering wheel. Do not touch that. I see it. It's got a brown handle. Do not do it. Do not do it. I don't want to shoot you, sir. It's the last thing I want to do. Don't do it. Please do not do it. No. Do not do it. Please do not do this to me. I do not want to live with this. Look at me. I don't want to live with this.
Man.
And that was Pasco County Sheriff Department pleading with a 79-year-old man who, by many accounts, they were concerned he may have some type of mental issue, Alzheimer's, or maybe suicide by caught. But far too often, all we hear is about the officers who went over the line. We never really celebrate the fact that many of them encounter stuff like this and exercise professionalism. So I want to tip our hats to them that they are able many times to restrain themselves in situations. They eventually had to shoot that gentleman, but he lived. Okay, they tried to. It goes on long, and they tried to pepper spray him. He tried to run over him. They had already disabled his car with stop sticks, and it ended up being where they were forced finally to shoot him, and then they began doing life-saving measures and got him to the hospital. And this happened about 2 months ago.
Great.
A lot of times people ask, well, why didn't they just let him go? They didn't have to do it. They should have just let him pull off. But just think about if someone is sitting there that is a clear threat to law enforcement, a clear threat to themselves, and law enforcement just lets them go. Now they are a threat to the community at large.
Exactly.
And it was a situation not too long ago where a guy jumped in his car and was trying to get away, and the police shot him. And it's an unfortunate circumstance, but he tried to run over police. So what if he left that scene? They just let him drive off, and then all of a sudden he goes down the street and he shoots 15 people. So that's why law enforcement can't just allow someone in those types of situations just to go about their way, because they are a danger to themselves as well as to others.
Greg, something that's, the thing that really sends chills up my spine is when you watch that video and you hear that deputy say, I don't want to have to live with this.
Yeah.
And I think, Doc, the other missing component, and we've had this conversation before, we know that there's infrastructure from a law enforcement perspective when you talk about training, when you talk about coaching, when you talk about de-escalation, but the other part that's missing, and we have a good friend that does a great job of it, but I don't know if we're ever going to saturate the market to be able to do it. But Greg, it must be the same level of infrastructure on the community side to do training so that the community folk also understand, man, there's a way to have that engagement and to be able to come back at a later date if you feel like you weren't treated right, de-escalate. I want my kids to come back home.
Yeah.
Let daddy deal with it after you come back home if it's an issue.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, a part of that infrastructure has to come from community and law enforcement relationships that are built and that are, that are nurtured, because there is a long-standing history and hurt still in some communities with law enforcement in those communities.
You're right.
The infrastructure should be there.
We know that there's problems, Greg. Come on, we're not going to deny that. I mean, there's problems on both sides.
Yeah.
But if you got infrastructure on one side where there's consistent and sustainable training and you don't have it on the other side, then we're going to see more of this.
No, absolutely.